The dust of the western town clung to everything. Boots, windowsills, wagon wheels, even the hearts of the folks who tried to make a life out there on the edge of nowhere. And on that particular afternoon, the sun beat down on the warped boards of the general store as Clara Weston stepped inside with a small wicker basket clutched tight in her hands, her gray dress plain but clean, her shawl pulled close against the wind that always seemed to whisper of storms yet to come. And though her posture was upright, her eyes carried the weight of hunger and worry. For at home, her two little ones had gone without supper the night before, and her pride battled fiercely with her desperation as she approached the counter, placing her list of flour, beans, and a strip of salt pork before the shopkeeper, a pinched-faced man named Mr. Carver, who looked her up and down, not with kindness, but with the cold calculation of coins he knew she did not possess. And when she asked, softly but firmly, if he might extend her credit until the end of the month, when she could sew and deliver the clothes promised to Mrs. Thompson, his lips pressed into a thin line and his head shook in finality, his words sharp as knives. "No more credit, Clara. Not a penny. Times are hard for everyone, and I won't carry folks who can't pay." And though she swallowed hard against the sting of humiliation, trying to remind herself that she was not begging for luxury, but for bread to keep her children alive, she felt the eyes of two other townsfolk in the store, judging, whispering, and her cheeks burned with shame she had not earned. And so she turned, gathering her dignity around her as best she could, and started for the door, empty-handed, her basket light and useless in her grip. But just as the hinges creaked open, another shadow fell across the doorway, broad-shouldered and sun-worn, a man who carried the desert dust in his coat and the long miles in his boots, his hat pulled low against the glare, and behind him a chestnut horse stood, tethered with patience and loyalty, its ears twitching as if listening to the silence he carried. And though few in town knew much of him, they knew enough that he was a cowboy named Luke, drifting from ranch to ranch, sometimes hired for his gun, sometimes for his skill with cattle, but never lingering long enough for roots to grow. And in that moment, his steel blue eyes caught Clara's downcast ones, and something unspoken passed between them, something that recognized hunger, not only of the body, but of the spirit. And without a word, he stepped aside, letting her pass, though he had seen and heard all that had transpired. And as she moved past him into the bright, punishing sunlight, she felt his presence behind her, steady and solid. And then his voice came low, meant only for her ears, roughened by dust, but softened by intent. "Ride with me. I'll fill your table tonight." And though the words were simple, they landed like a lifeline tossed across a storm. And she paused, her breath catching, torn between fear of scandal. What would folks say if she went off riding with a cowboy, stranger, and the deeper fear of returning home with nothing once again, her children's eyes hollow, their bellies aching, and she turned her head just enough to meet his gaze, searching for mockery or pity, but finding instead a quiet steadiness, a promise that cost her no coin, but carried weight truer than any contract Mr. Carver might sign, and still she hesitated, clutching her basket until the horse snorted softly, as if to remind her that choices sometimes arrive only once. And when she finally gave the smallest nod, Luke tilted his hat in acknowledgement, led his horse forward, and together they stepped away from the wooden porches and the prying eyes of town into the open road where dust and sky met in endless possibility. And Clara felt for the first time in months that maybe, just maybe, there was still kindness left in the world, though it came from the most unexpected places, carried in the whisper of a cowboy's vow.